Welcome back to The Art of Adventure. This is episode 153 with Matt Bailey. The Art of Adventure is the podcast that helps you travel the world, run your business, and embark on an epic quest. I'm your host, lead explorer, and guide, Derek Loudermilk. You can go to derekloudermilk.com to check out the show notes for this episode and sign up for the Art of Adventure email newsletter where you'll get my monthly reading recommendation email. If you're looking to start a business that you can take anywhere in the world with you, head to my coaching page on derekloudermilk.com and sign up for your free 30-minute strategy session with me. Today on the podcast, we have Matt Bailey, who is a Canadian badass. This is surprisingly the first episode where we dig into travel hacking. And travel hacking, and Matt will explain it much better than I can, is democratizing cheap or free travel. And I've used travel hacking myself to get around $20,000 in free flights, many of them first class, over the last 4 years by saving my airline miles. And Matt has done a lot more of this than I have, and he has a community based around where he'll teach you to travel hack. So even in this interview, even though I have experience, I learned a lot from him about stopovers and adding extra trips to your flights. He also teaches us about credit cards, how they affect credit score, credit cards being one of the ways you can earn miles. We also talk about how to get what you want when you're on the phone with an airline. And of course, he's really well traveled, has lots of stories. He's completed an entire 100-item bucket list, and now he's on to his second list. So you're going to really love this interview because, like all Canadians, Matt is really genuine and fun-loving. And without further ado, here is Matt Bailey. Welcome back to The Art of Adventure. I'm here with my friend Matt Bailey. Welcome to the show.
Hey Derek, how's it going?
Good, thanks for being here. And for the listener, Matt is the founder of Live Limitless and Canadian Free Flyers, and maybe some other things. And we're going to talk a bit about travel and travel hacking today, which we haven't really talked about on The Art of Adventure before, but travel hacking is how I've gotten some of my flights, international flights, flying first class, and you've done quite a bit more than I have, and so I definitely want to talk about that. But I don't know if we've talked about this before. You tried out for the Canadian speed skating team, and did you know that I was a speed skater as well?
I just noticed that today when I was looking at your blog. And by the way, is it loud where I am? Because I got hail hitting the window. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but I mean, whatever. It just adds to the ambience.
That's what you get for interviewing a Canadian in winter.
I know, that's true. But yeah, so I did, yeah. I saw that you actually speed skated. For me, it was literally just a kind of like a fun thing to do. Like I've played hockey most of my life, so I definitely know how to skate, but I've never speed skated before. And it was kind of I had just moved from the town I grew up in northern Alberta, and I moved to the kind of the bigger city down south, and I was on my own for the first time, and that was kind of when I started to change and kind of I don't know, I had that feeling like I could be whatever I wanted to be, and I didn't have any friends, like old friends around me. I didn't have any family or anything. It was just me kind of starting fresh, and so anytime I saw anything that kind of sparked my interest, I would just like do it. And I saw a posting one day that was like, yeah, we're looking for people to be on the Canadian speed skating team for the Olympics, whatever year it was. It was like 4 years away or 2 years away. So they were looking for people to train. And I just thought, oh, that sounds awesome. Like, I doubt I'll make it, but I'll go out to the tryouts anyways.
Yeah.
It was a hardcore experience.
Did you borrow some speed skates?
No, I just had my hockey skates. I asked them about that. I said, like, is that okay? Because it said on there, like, you don't need speed skating experience, but you definitely have to have strong skating abilities. But yeah, it was a hardcore workout. I'll always remember it because I had a roommate at the time. Like I was going to college, and like just by it would happen to be on Saturday morning, the tryouts, and and like of course my roommate just by chance had a house party that night, so I couldn't sleep. So it was pretty much like pulling almost an all-nighter before training out for training for this Olympic team. And I got there in the morning, and I think one of our first activities was like the pedal bike.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like an 8-hour tryout, and the first 4 hours were like off ice,
Yeah.
and the next 4 hours were on ice. So we had like this pedal bike where you race against like the computer,
Mm-hmm.
and it was only for a minute. So I thought like, man, this seems like the easiest thing in the world, like a minute biking. And they were kind of like, so just so you know, this is going to be pretty hard. Like everyone was kind of having a hard time, and I just thought like, how can it be that hard, right? I mean, it's just a minute on the bike, but so you start out for 10 seconds, and then all of a sudden like the resistance kicks in, and because they're all surrounding you and like egging you on, of course you give it like everything you got. You have to like beat this computer. And when I after that minute, I came off, and I remember, it's hard to walk, and so they're like, well, you should go pedal bike now, like on your own, just to not build up like any lactic acid.
Yeah.
And so I went on that for a bit, like with everyone else, and I think I lasted 30 seconds, and I went and puked. So
Oh gosh.
it was the first time I've ever been sick from working out. It was like, I don't know if it was a combination of difficulty without really sleeping like the night before, but it's pretty.
I think that happens to everyone. It happened to me in the pool the first time we were doing something where you could only breathe every 5 strokes or something, and I was just totally oxygen deprived, and the pool was warm, and I just was like, I love it. That's great. Speed skating. And I still love watching speed skating, the speed skating relay in the Olympics. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. And it was a pretty interesting time in my life, because I think that was really the moment when I kind of became like who I am now, in a way where you aren't afraid to try new things. I don't think I was like that when I grew up. I think I just got more into like, I don't know, maybe growing up in the same place for 20 years, and I was more into like partying in high school and that kind of stuff. And maybe I felt myself like attached to that stigma. Like I didn't really want to try new things out of like fear of embarrassment or something like that. So by moving cities, it just gave me this new freedom. Like no one knew who I was, so I could be whatever. And I just remember like my roommate's friends always loved coming over, because I would always have some weird story, like something that I was doing, like acting in a movie, or that speed skating thing, or just all kinds of random stuff. I was always the one with like doing something interesting, and not like the normal.
That's really interesting what you said specifically about that was the first time you thought you could be anything you wanted. And when you get to that moment, I imagine that the world has so many possibilities that it's almost overwhelming to think about. What did it feel like to have that realization?
I don't like. It's funny. Like back then, I find now it's almost more not stressful, but yeah, it's like you said, like overwhelming. But at that time, I guess I wasn't really like thinking that far ahead. I think I was only 20 or 21 anyways, and I was in school, and so I didn't really have that thinking like too deep into the future, or like what it could be. But it just felt like, it was just like a more inspiring kind of life, because I didn't feel like bogged down by anything. Like I never imagined myself, for example, learning how to like salsa dance. And like one day I just saw an advertising for salsa dancing, and I thought, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And at the same time, it's probably a good place to meet girls and that kind of stuff. So I just like signed up, and I went into it and started learning salsa dancing. And so I was doing like random stuff like that. And yeah, it just felt like, I guess life felt a lot more fun. Like, I think that was when I realized that like, it's kind of up to you to make life fun. And like, there's definitely no room to be bored if you don't want to be.
Did you meet your wife salsa dancing?
No, I know. I've actually met my I did meet a girl there that I dated for a long time, but that's an ex now. So now, but it's kind of ironic that my wife now is Mexican and really loves salsa dancing. So
Perfect.
exactly.
There you go. And, I was really excited to get you on the show because we're pretty similar, I think, in a lot of ways. We both have this sort of bucket list that we like to cross things off, and sometimes just for the heck of doing it or having a weird story. You've been to all the provinces in Canada. I've been to all the states in the U.S., although there's how
Quite a
many?
bit more.
Eight or 12? I
Yeah,
used to be able to name all of them.
I don't even know offhand, but it's because I get confused because there's territories as well,
Territories.
and I haven't been
You
to
got the
those.
Yukon Territory.
Yeah,
You got none of it
yeah, in the Northwest territories.
in the Northwest
Yeah,
Territory.
so I
Okay.
haven't been to the Northwest territories or none of it yet. Um, actually, none of it's quite difficult to get to.
Mm.
It's more expensive to go there than Australia by flight. So
Oh my gosh.
it's a very secluded place. Like no one really goes there. Which is interesting because it's in Canada. You would think they'd make it at least accessible, but
And do I guess you call them First Nations still live there? Is that mostly
yeah, there's definitely a lot
who's
of
up
First
there?
Nations and people. I think there's mining stuff like that. I've met people who've gone there for work, and it's an interesting place because in the winter it's 24 hours of darkness, and in the summer it's 24 hours of daylight. And but yeah, there's a lot of issues up there for sure, and there's no roads. There's no roads there, and there's no roads between all the communities there. So you literally have to fly between all
Wow.
places. Yeah, so it's I think
There's
for people up there, it's expensive to leave. Anyway.
Yeah, it's funny to think about that there's still large parts of Canada and Siberia and the Sahara, the outback, where there's just no one,
Yeah, no, right.
you know?
Well, only polar bears. Yeah. I always thought. I mean, not to get too off topic, but I just thought. So last year I lived in Winnipeg for a few months, which is like in Manitoba, and northern Manitoba is where you would go if you want to see polar bears. So it's a place called Churchill, and I haven't been yet, but I just thought it was just so amazing to see, like on Facebook they were posting that there when they do trick or treating for Halloween, there's only like 1,000 kids. I think it said, I could be wrong on this number, but basically there's maybe 1,000 kids and like 10,000 polar bears. So when they go trick or treating, they actually have to have helicopters in the sky to watch for polar bears
Wow.
to not eat you. Like,
There's a great documentary with Ewan McGregor about Churchill.
oh really? Okay, I'll have to check
Yeah,
that out.
yeah.
It just seems like such a interesting way to grow up.
How do you know it's Halloween when there's helicopters everywhere? Let's see. You may have a current bucket list that you're working on, but you have published 100-item bucket list that you've crossed everything off on the list. Was that before a certain age, like before you turned 30 or something?
Yeah, well, that would have been I actually just crossed. I'd done most of them before 30, but the last one I just accomplished maybe like 4 months ago. So my last
Oh,
item was speaking. I wanted to speak in front of a group of more than 100 people, and then one day a friend of mine said, they do. It's called Hachakacha. So I guess it's like
Hachakucha. Yeah, yeah.
okay, okay. So I think it's from Japan, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. So they do it here in Calgary, and I think they had lost a speaker. So they're like, "Do you want to come speak?" And the topic's on less. And I think because I was writing about travel hacking,
Mm,
with less money, they were like, you can talk about whatever you want as long as it
yeah.
has to do with less. And I was like, okay. And then I had already said okay. And then I found out after that it's actually like 400 people, and it's like a paying audience. And I was like, wow, up until that point, I spoke in front of maybe 30 was my max. So it was a big jump, but it was awesome. And
Awesome.
that was my
Congrats.
last. Thanks.
Yeah. What was besides the speaking, what was one of those 100 things that comes back to you the most? One of your favorite memories?
Um, I don't know now. Like a lot of them definitely had to do with, for sure. Like I think one of the biggest like life changing ones were like bungee jumping, um, scuba diving, like those kind of things. Because growing up, I don't even know when I remember seeing scuba divers like in pictures, probably in Nat Geo, and it didn't even occur to me like maybe I could do that one day. I didn't even know of it as a tourism thing at that time. So I was never really that kind of person that would, I didn't even learn how to ski until the last 6 years. At that point, I just wasn't into that kind of stuff. So my first long-term trip in 2009 was when I went to New Zealand and Australia. And my first day that I arrived in New Zealand, I signed up to skydive the next day just because I saw it in pictures at the hostel. And
Wow.
so that was like obviously like terrifying. And I think signing up for it the next day was awesome because I couldn't back out because you had to give like 24 hours notice. And I think that kind of kickstarted my feeling of just doing whatever. But it was bungee jumping really that I think was my biggest challenge. And that was on my last day in New Zealand. And I was in Auckland and I was looking for things to do. And I think I saw that, the bungee jumping off the Auckland Bridge was a great activity. And for some reason, it made me way more scared than skydiving. And I just remember like waiting for the bus to pick you up and almost backing out because I was like already sweating and I'm not sure if I should do this. And I hadn't paid yet, so I actually could have backed out. And then a guy that I had met previously from Australia on the trip, he randomly showed up as well at that bus stop to go bungee. And he was like, "Where are you going?" Because I was literally about to leave. So then we both ended up jumping together. And ironically, I loved it so much that when I came back up and they said, "Do you want to go again?" I said yes, and he said no. But for me, it was just like that feeling of, it felt like a huge accomplishment on like a personal development level to be able to like jump off a bridge.
Bungee jumping, so scary.
It is pretty scary, and
Oh my gosh.
I don't think it gets better. I mean, maybe at some point it gets better, but like I did it again actually for the first World Domination Summit. Back when it was just like 500 people, I organized like 25 of us to go bungee jumping in Washington. Cool. It's just like 2 hours from Portland, and it wasn't any easier the second time.
It's interesting. We've already talked about you moving cities and how that was sort of like reset things or opened up things for you, and then skydiving and bungee jumping as turning points. What do you think of this idea of like our life changes in a single moment, and it's like an incident that changes the trajectory of our lives? Have you had any other experiences recently that have produced a change in direction for your life?
It's hard for me to pinpoint like one thing, but I definitely, for example, with travel, I never really considered traveling the world. I don't know why Australia piqued my interest when I was younger, maybe just because it was the opposite side of the world or something like that. It just seemed like a strange place to go at that time. And but I didn't think of myself like, oh, I want to go to Asia and I want to go to Europe and everything. So, but after that trip was kind of like, and then I took a week to Indonesia actually. And that was when I went, I guess maybe that's one moment that really changed, because I was in Australia for 6 months and someone had said, we were trying to go up the West Coast and the car broke down. And at that point I was like, oh, I just don't want to like do this again, like trying to find people to jump in the car with. And I think I was just getting tired. And someone said Bali. And it's funny, I knew so little about travel or the world at that point that I didn't know what Bali was. And it's a pretty like famous place. And I bought a one-way ticket there without knowing what it was. And I remember showing up at the airport and like, you have to buy a visa for $25. And I turned around and asked like another tourist if that was a scam. Like I really had no idea about anything. I just like showed up and like walking around the streets looking for accommodation. But it was like kind of that week in Bali that really piqued my interest into going back to Asia. And then that's pretty much what started me like wanting to travel the world. And that definitely changed my life a lot. So
Perfect. And so that, I'm guessing that was before you learned about travel hacking and how to make all that work.
yeah, I didn't really start learning about travel hacking until well after Australia, I think, and New Zealand.
So let's get into that right now.
Sure.
What is travel hacking?
So, I mean, really, travel hacking is like learning all about the frequent flyer mile world and like how to take advantage of different ways of earning points and of redeeming them and stuff like that. I think like Chris Guillebeau had a succinct way of putting it, where it was democratizing free or cheap travel for people. So I like the way he puts it, and that's actually who I was introduced to it from as well.
So here's my knowledge of travel hacking, and maybe you can expand from there. I've opened credit cards with sign-up bonuses that give you a bunch of miles. Then I've redeemed those miles for international flights, and I redeemed them for business class level flights. And so you can get a $5,000, $6,000, cost flight, a seat for 60 or 80,000 miles, and it's a lot cheaper than paying the $6,000 to actually buy the seat.
Yeah, for sure. And that's definitely like one of the bigger parts of travel hacking. And I found like travel hacking is mostly available really in Canada or the US, because we're definitely the two happiest countries for credit cards. Like they don't really like exist very much, even in Europe. Like a lot of places, they certainly accept them, but not a lot of people have them. And the offers that they give for credit cards there is not very high. And then in Asia, I find them like, not a lot of people have credit cards. And in Japan, when I was there, they didn't even really accept credit cards. So I find it's definitely easier to travel hack if you live in the US or Canada.
Okay. And what is is the goal to get a lot of air miles and then spend them on flights?
Yeah, that was pretty much like the goal. Actually, my first kind of foray into travel hacking was with hotels with Priceline, and so it depends like what you consider travel hacking. But I had learned that Priceline is like has that name your own bid feature,
Yes.
and I had learned some tips along the way of how to. I think usually you make a bid on like a star level and a location, and if it's not accepted, you have to choose like another star level or another location to make another bid, or you have to wait 24 hours. But there's a way you can kind of like game the system a little bit by, for example, for Vancouver, BC, there was like 4 areas of downtown I wouldn't mind being, and I wanted to get like a 4-star hotel. So if you select, before you do any bidding, you kind of select on each area of the city, and you find the ones that don't have any 4-star hotels. So you mark them down so that when you make a bid, say downtown for a 4-star, if it's not accepted, you select one of those other areas, and then it'll allow you to make a bid again. But there's no chance of you getting a hotel in that area because there's no such thing as a 4-star hotel. So it's kind of like just learning that way, and then you can get another maybe 4 or 5 bids like right after another to ensure you get the cheapest price.
Huh.
So that was my first foray, and we ended up staying like on the Sheraton, like right in downtown Vancouver for $80 a night, which is super cheap. It's like usually like $300 a night there. And they even, when I got there, I said like, any chance you could put me in a high up room just so I have a view? And they were like, yeah, sure. So we got on the 27th floor. We even had a balcony overlooking like the water and the mountains, and it was like $80 a night. So that was kind of the first time I was like, I really love this travel hack stuff. And then slowly I got in. At that moment, there wasn't that many credit cards in Canada that were offering the points. But then over the next year or two, like American Express really kind of exploded themselves into Canada, and that's when a lot of like the bonuses went up.
And are credit cards seem like they're the key piece here.
Yeah, well, it's definitely easier. Like there's definitely ways to earn miles and points no matter like where you're from, but it's definitely a much slower game like without credit cards. Just because even like in the U.S. it's even more substantial than Canada because sometimes you guys get credit cards that come with like a whopping like 100,000 points, which is already enough to go anywhere in the world with one credit card. So it's
Yeah.
amazing.
So I just opened a credit card with 100,000
Wow, yeah.
points, and those will probably come my next billing cycle. Say you had 100,000 points, how would you look to spend them?
Um, well, now just in the last few years, because I used to just like my first trip. So 100,000 typically will take you anywhere in the world in economy. And I always like to maximize the like stopovers and open jaws. So if possible, I find you get the most value out of doing that. So, I mean, it always depends on the airline, but with Air Canada and the Star Alliance, and I think it's mostly the same with anyone, you can typically have like two stopovers or one stopover and one open jaw along the way. So, not this previous March, but the year before, we went to Tanzania. So we wanted to do like a safari in the Serengeti there. So I used my points instead of 100,000, which it would have been in economy. It was 150,000 in business. And then so I booked it for me and my wife, and I made sure to get. We flew into Tanzania, and we actually did around the world. So we flew from Calgary, like all across Canada, across the Atlantic, into Europe for like a quick layover, then down to Tanzania. Then I organized it so on the way back we did a 1 month stopover in Ethiopia, and then from Ethiopia we flew to Japan instead of coming back across the Atlantic. We stayed a month in Japan and then flew back to Calgary across the Pacific. So we literally did an around the world trip for the same amount of points. Like there was no extra amount of points. So we got like a month in Tanzania, a month in Ethiopia, a month in Japan, all business class in between every single leg. And it was like $600 in taxes or something like that, which wasn't bad considering. And a lot of that came from Japan because of the airport tax.
Wow.
So
you can get stopovers anywhere.
Yeah, as long as it's like kind of on a route, like from so for example, even once my first trip where I did stopovers, we were just going to Mexico, and so to go to Mexico from Canada, you're only allowed one stopover, but you can also get, I don't know if it's truly unlimited, but you can get a lot of layovers if you want. So a layover is like anything less than 24 hours. So I know some people who maximize that. They can get like pretty tiring, I think, but we wanted to go to Chicago, which seems like so off the route. I don't know what we wanted to go to see like the Christmas parade. I thought maybe it was going to be this pretty cool thing, and I had never been to Chicago. And so at that time, like from Calgary to Mexico, you wouldn't think the stopover in Chicago exists because it's quite a bit east. But it was a possibility because we were on United and they have like a hub there. So we did. The agent literally booked us 23 hours and 57 minutes in Chicago. So we got there at like 2 p.m. and left the next day at almost 2 p.m. And then we flew to Houston, Texas, and that's where we did like a 3-day stopover. And I rented a vehicle to go to Austin. And then we flew to Mexico City and back. And it was for the same amount of points. And I think the taxes increased by like $30. So like in a way, we got like 24 hours in Chicago and 3 days in Texas for $30 for both of us. So it's like
wow.
Yeah. So I definitely love like trying to maximize these stopovers and layovers.
And how are you finding this? How do you know which stopovers and layovers are available?
So there's usually what I would do is so the easiest way, if you just want to see like kind of guaranteed stopovers is you could do like a search. So you could go into whatever the point redemption system you're using and do a search. So for me, I would do like Calgary to Mexico City, and then when you open up the flight segments, it would show like where they usually stop. So like easiest ones would be like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Denver, Houston are kind of like the four ones that you almost would be guaranteed because the flights always stop in one of those places. And then for Chicago, what I did was I made like a pretend routing. So I did like you can do with Air Canada's system, or I should say with Aeroplan, you can do a search for multi-city. So I would type like Calgary to Chicago, Chicago to Mexico City, and then Mexico City back to Calgary. And if it worked, then I knew it was available. Like it would be a possibility. So you could do it that way. Kind of a less strategic way is just kind of looking on the map. Like I knew, if you went Calgary in this case, or to Africa, I knew that we'd be going across Canada and across the Atlantic and Europe. So you can almost be sure that you'd be able to go to, say, London or the Netherlands or something like that. But for Japan, it was just because I did the search going like Calgary to Tanzania and back, and I saw that some of the routings were like Hong Kong and Japan. So then I knew you could go that direction as well. And the worst case, you could always phone. Like I've done that a lot of times. Like just speak to an agent. There's no charge just to kind of like make up an itinerary, and they'd be easy to tell you if it's possible.
Yeah. And so there's no extra charge for staying for a month?
No, so you can, like the only charges that sometimes go up is sometimes like the airport has their own tax. So I think Japan has some of the most expensive stopovers, but it was like, I think it added 100 or two just because of the airport in Tokyo. But at the same time, you're getting kind of like a free trip to Tokyo.
Yeah.
And a stopover can be, from what I understand, it might depend on the airline, but typically a stopover can be anywhere up to a year. So like your whole trip has to be done within a year to make it work. But you could do like a 5-month stopover if you wanted, because we did one of the cooler trips we did as well. But we did it for our honeymoon. Like, well, we were getting married in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then after we wanted to go to South America, but we wanted to kind of like travel through Colombia and through Ecuador and through Peru and Bolivia. So we didn't want to fly into Colombia and have to fly back out, because then we would have had to buy a flight from Bolivia to Colombia.
Yep.
So in that case, we did an open jaw. So like going to Mexico City would have been 40,000 points. And then if you look at it going to Bolivia, the furthest destination was only 50,000 points. So for 50,000 points, we did like Mexico City was our 2-month stopover. So then we like drove to Ixtapa and got married on the beach, and then flew to Colombia. And then we departed, and then we like traveled by bus and everything all the way down to Bolivia over 3 months, and then flew back from Bolivia with a 24-hour layover in Mexico City just to see her family again, and then back to Canada for just like 10,000 more points.
Wow.
So it's pretty like insane what you can do with all you need is the time, really.
You can just make it up.
Yeah, pretty much.
How long does it take you to sort out, say, this trip to Mexico and South America, to figure out all the details?
Like sometimes with that one, it was a little more time consuming. Like it's probably like 10 hours or 15 hours in general, but it was mostly because with the open jaws, it's more tricky because now you can't book it on your own. At least not with Air Canada, with Aeroplan. So we had to phone in. But so it took me a few phone calls, because I would call in and speak to the agent for a good like half hour to determine, if it works, how the routing works, because it also depends on how many miles you're flying and stuff like that. So then I would kind of figure out the routing and determine if it's possible, and then go back to the drawing board and then call back a second time and book it.
Yeah. And so when you say 40 or 50,000 miles, that's per person.
Yeah.
That you're talking about.
Yeah.
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 And okay, so if a normal credit card costs 50,000, gives you 50,000 points, you and your wife both open a credit card, but then you spend that on a trip, then you're back down to zero. And you accumulate points by using the credit card, but you have to spend $50,000 to get 50,000 points that way. So how many credit cards are you opening a year to keep this whole thing running?
So in the past, like I kind of toned down a bit this year because we didn't have any travel plans. But like during that our mad like rush the last 2 years where we did a lot of business class trips and everything, I had earned almost, or it was 1,000,000 miles in 1 year.
Wow.
And that was mostly, I think I had like 9 credit cards at a time. And my wife didn't have quite as many, but probably 5. And then they're kind of, I don't know if it's quite the same now, but there was a time where American Express was giving you like referral points. So if you referred someone to the credit card, they would get 10,000 extra points, and you would also get 10,000 extra points. So I think I actually ended up referring like 30 people or something. So that was like 300,000 points.
Oh wow!
Right there. So it added up a lot in 1 year. I still have maybe like 500,000 left.
Nice.
That I haven't used yet, which is why I kind of like took time off from the credit cards for this year, because I don't really need the points.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to like just sit there in case they, I don't know, become devalued or something.
So opening a lot of credit cards, and have you closed some of them since, or do you still have up to 9 credit cards?
No, well, I at this point I probably have about 6, but I typically try to close the accounts like before the year ends. So I try to like take advantage of the no annual fee that some credit cards offer, and then cancel the card before the end of the year. And then if I like the card, I might apply for it again a year later, 6 months later. Something like that.
And they'll do that for you.
Yeah, I think lately they're cracking down a little bit on that, but typically it does work. It just depends it's kind of like a case by case basis. Like so it's definitely changing all the time, but traditionally pretty much you could apply for the same card like 4 to 6 months later and you would get the bonus points again.
Oh, okay.
But I always just for like meeting other people who were travel hackers, and one of them was like a financial guy, and he was telling me like for credit scores, it's good to have a couple kind of anchor credit cards that you keep like with no annual fee. So like I've had one since I've had 2 since I was 18 that don't have any, like the benefits suck, but I don't even use them. They're kind of in a drawer, but they're active. But it just looks good to have that. I've had them on my account for 14 years with no delinquencies kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think like one of the coolest things I learned about, I guess, travel hacking and credit scores is that it actually helps your credit score having more credit cards as long as you're not spending a lot on them.
Interesting.
Yeah, like you would think, a lot of people think like if you have 10 credit cards, probably you're more at risk than having one. But the only way you'd be more at risk is if you're someone who's like spending uncontrollably on all of them and not paying it off, then it's definitely not a good idea.
And if we're redeeming miles on things like hotel stays or other things, is that a good idea?
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of that because I find you get a lot more value out of points. And like typically when we travel, we're going somewhere for kind of a longer period of time, so we don't really focus on like 4-star hotels, or we're usually staying at guest houses and cheaper places anyways. But yeah, typically like it's not as much value. We've used it. I think the most popular ones are like the Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott, and definitely the Starwoods preferred cards, just because you have access to a lot of different hotels. And from what I've heard from other people is like with the Marriott, I think it's Marriott, if you have like you can do kind of a point combination with miles. So if you're someone who likes taking those 1 week all-inclusive trips and staying on the beach and having like the beautiful hotel, then sometimes with those ones it can make sense because you can combine it. They'll give you like a deal where you get your flight plus like 7 days in a 5-star Marriott on the beach for I don't know, say 100,000 points instead of what it maybe would be 150 if you did it separately.
Gotcha.
But for the way we travel, which is probably similar to you, where we're going like different places around the world for months at a time, we don't really use them for hotels.
Hey guys, Derek here. I want to take a quick second to talk with you about starting a location independent business. This is something that is awesome. A lot of people are interested in it. You've probably been thinking about it for a while listening to this podcast, and maybe you're ready to pull the trigger but don't know exactly where to start in terms of which business idea should I go with first, or do I even have a profitable business idea? Maybe you're more concerned with the travel thing. You haven't traveled abroad before, or you're wondering how to do long-term travel. There's a lot of things that are up in the air that you're wondering about. How to move existing businesses online, how to do social media and marketing and networking, whether you should have a podcast or blog or video log in accompanying your business. There's a lot to consider. So this is where I might be able to help you, because I've helped lots of aspiring digital nomads through personal coaching and business mentorship already get their businesses up and off the ground so they can travel the world full time if they want. So if you want to find out what I can help you with, I'm offering a free strategy session to listeners of The Art of Adventure. That's a 30-minute session. It's valued at $100. And in this session, dial in your real goals, what's getting in the way, and how to break through it. Awesome. This is a free session. All you need to do to claim your spot for 2017, get your year kicked off right, is email me, derek@derekloudermilk.com, or head over to our website, to the coaching page, and sign up there. But the easiest way, just email me, derek@derekloudermilk.com, and we'll chat a bit more about setting you up. Now back to the episode. When you stayed in Japan or Tanzania, did you have a single base for a month? You got an apartment for a month kind of thing?
No, so we definitely tire ourselves out when we travel. But we typically don't stay in a place longer than 4 days or so. So we try to see as much of the country as possible. The only times we've stayed longer times was I did my last semester of university in Malaysia. So we lived there for 4 months. And in Mexico, we've stayed months at a time in one place. But traditionally, with Japan, we had 3 weeks, and we were very tired by the end of it because we would get on the train every 2 or 3 days and go to a new city.
Where are you finding your accommodations mostly?
Typically, it depends on the place. When we were in Asia, for example, in Southeast Asia, traditionally, because we were there a year, after I went to school, we backpacked around, and we never really, for the most part, we would just show up in the place and just kind of look for a place. But Southeast Asia is a little easier for that. I think with Japan, I believe it was booking.com, had a lot of places on there. Mm-hmm. For Africa, I kind of organized it through email, things like that. Like we did a safari, so that was kind of organized. And then I would reach out to different hotels in different locations, kind of scout it that way. But sometimes Airbnb or couch surfing.
Yeah. Interesting. I wanted to ask you, for the listener, about your business model with Canadian Free Flyers and how you run that.
Yeah, so it's changed a lot over. It was kind of interesting how I started it when we were in Asia, but I didn't really launch it. It was live, but we were traveling, so I didn't bother doing any marketing. And then all of a sudden, I got an email from the Toronto Star, which is a major newspaper in Canada, and they were like, "Oh, we want to do a story on travel hacking, and you're the only one we could find that's Canadian doing it. So we'd like to do a story." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that'll be awesome." So we did I was in Laos, and we did it over Skype, and I remember we had to call 6 times because of the bad connection. And
oh wow!
And then they launched it. I wanted it to be ready then, so I got together a payment, a buy now button, and it was pretty independently done. at that moment, but it launched when we were in China, which kind of sucked too because of their system where you're not really allowed on a lot of the internet. I wasn't able to like access my WordPress site from there, so I was just hoping for the best until we got back to Canada. But that was my first influx of customers. So at that time, it was like a one-time fee, kind of like an ebook in a way. And then I transitioned into a membership site. So I was charging like $10 to $25 a month, depending on the services. But it was like deal alerts. So anytime I found out there was a deal for Canadians for earning points, like whether it's like a new credit card or anything like signing up on a website to get 500 points, whatever, anything I deemed kind of worthy, I would email it out to everyone so that they didn't have to do any research. And then there was also lots of like written tutorials for them to look at, and depending on the level, I would like help them with the redemption, like trying to figure out what open jaws or stopovers they could do to maximize their points. And it was going good for a while, but I think I've learned that membership sites are quite difficult in a way. I mean, with travel hacking, there's not a lot of new content on like a monthly basis. So I think it's hard to convince people to pay every month, even though it's kind of a low fee. So now I've changed it, instead of doing that where it's like a boot camp structure in a way. So they pay like a higher fee, but it's one time, and they get access to all the videos, all the tutorials. I've been doing some live Q&A calls where people can like call in and ask me questions. And then I still do the deal alerts, but for that one, I just include it for a year with that price. And then if they still want that, it'd be like a low fee after, and I'll keep sending them deals. And now I'm working on like a Facebook group as well, like a private Facebook group for anyone who's members. So,
okay.
And I started something else new too, like a personal maximization plan. So if you don't want the videos, or even if you do, it can be part of the plan. But basically, you answer a few questions on like your spending habits, what credit cards you have now, what your credit score is, or if you know it, and that kind of stuff. And then I tell you based on like where you want to go, what credit cards you should get, and
cool.
And like how you should use your your everyday spending, like where to get your gas to maximize your points, all that kind of stuff. So more of like a personal plan that I send like PDF format. And
they pay an additional fee for that.
Yeah. So you can just buy that on its own. I think it's I can't even remember. I think it's $120 for that, or you can buy like the certain plan where you get all the videos plus the deal alerts plus that and everything else. Yeah.
Nice.
And I'm working on doing that for. So that's with Canadian Free Flyers, and then with Live Limitless, because like really most of my readers are not Canadian, like mostly just based on population. Most of them are from the US and Europe and everything. So I started one called Zero to Dream Trip.
Okay.
And that's pretty much the same concept, but for anyone, not just for Canadians. And with that one, it was the boot camp where you sign up at a certain time, and every week we do a live Q&A. But I'm going to be changing that right away, just because it can be inconvenient. Like if you're not ready to sign up on this date, and then you have to wait months before the next boot camp starts. So I'm going to change it so it's the same as Canadian Free Flyers, where you just get like instant access to all the information.
Yeah. All right. Nice. Do you also have someone, if I said, Matt, will you just take my miles and just, book me these stopovers in these cool places, and I just pay you to do that?
I've like,
is that something you do?
I've considered doing that. It can be hard because I know with the US it's different. Like in Canada, for example, with Aeroplan, which is the system most probably use, they would have to like put my name on their account, and then like it can be like troublesome, because if I call and then maybe they have the booking or they don't, and then I have to call you, or maybe you have to be on the line to give approval for me to book it, or I'd be nervous if I book it and it's like you want to change the date. So it's a little more complicating. So I haven't really decided if I want to do it that way, but I definitely offer services where, like if you're saying I want to go to Australia, But I have a few months and I'd like to do stopovers and stuff. And then I can help you figure out like where to go and who to book with to make sure you're not paying as much taxes and all that kind of stuff and where to stay. And then in the end, you would do the actual booking, but I would kind of help guide you along the way. I think is easier.
And with so the membership site or just having a Facebook group, that would be included as well?
Yeah.
Or would that be like a paid membership site, paid Facebook sort of mastermind?
Yeah, I debated like both options. So as of now with the Canadian Free Flyers, it's just included with depending on the membership level you choose. So it's like, it'd be the one-time fee and then you'd be in there. So the only thing I would charge a little tiny bit for after the year would be the email alerts, just because I'm doing kind of the research and like curating all the best deals and emailing it out to you. But yeah, the Facebook group kind of I did a survey with people who are both like signed up for the free version of Canadian Free Flyers, which is just like more information on travel hacking and stuff like that. And even with people who had canceled in the past, and I just asked them like different questions based to see what they would like to see in the program. And one of them was like a way to interact. So rather than a forum, I would love to start a forum, but I think you need quite a bit of people to make it kind of a success. And whereas the Facebook group, you can kind of get started right away. And most people have Facebook. There's the odd person who doesn't, but.
Yeah. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about travel hacking yet that you think we should know?
I don't think so. Like you can go so many ways with it. Like there's definitely even further advanced topics of travel hacking when you're getting into like multiple legs. And I know sometimes like the US Airways used to have like this Grand Slam promotion where you had to fly certain miles. So people would like, I don't know, if you were going Los Angeles to Florida, instead of just going the normal way, maybe direct even, you would go like all the way to Chicago and then like to Boston and then maybe like the middle of the US and then back to Florida just because you're trying to gain miles to earn points and stuff like that. So there's more like advanced strategies like that. But for me, I try to make it as like simple as possible. Not really like scientific with all of it, but just like utilizing the points to get like a really amazing trip. And then of course there's like airport lounges, like different credit cards if you want to start maximizing being able to access different lounges. And then there's the different flights. Like for me, the bread and I don't know what you said, the holy grail of kind of first class travel is the Emirates plane. So they always pretty much connect in Dubai. And we were in India and I thought like it'd be kind of cool if we could fly first class in this thing, because they've got like your own private suite and a shower on the airplane, all this kind of stuff. So it turns out that Alaska Airlines, at least at that time, had a partnership with Emirates, and I had Alaska Airline points. So we ended up like a one-way flight on Emirates is typically 15,000 US in the first class, and we got it for $89 each. Wow. And we ended up flying first class from India to Dubai. We stayed there for 4 days because we figured we were there anyways. And then we took it was like a 17.5-hour flight straight to Houston. And that was when we had like the fancy, like your own suite. You get like pajamas and like a 27-inch TV. It's really like, it's
That's
totally
worth it. That's a long flight.
Yeah. It's pretty extravagant. It's hard to believe there's people who pay for those, but
yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So like there's things like that. Like for me, that was kind of a cool goal that I know I would never pay for. And just being able to fly, right. There's lots of business classes out there and some of them are much better than others. And that one's like one of those ones that you kind of like aspire to once you're getting into travel hacking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Awesome. Matt, I've got 2 questions that I ask all of my guests. The first one is, if you could change or add something to the world, what would you wish for the world to have?
I don't know if sometimes I don't know the exact word, but I guess let's say like the courage to go after, a dream that they have. Like I think that was one of the reasons that got me into blogging, was just by even doing those smaller things that we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, like, I don't know, trying out for the speed skating team or salsa dancing. And I just found like all those little things, they build up like a confidence in you, and it's kind of like a snowball effect. And eventually you feel like you can kind of do anything. And I see so many people who want to do something. I don't know, it could be as simple as writing a book, if I don't know if that's simple, or learning how to dance or whatever. And it's like they never, I don't know if it's a confidence thing, but they never take that, even the first step of going out and maybe signing up for a dance class. Like, it's pretty simple to get into it, but for me, it's like that was the whole inspiration behind Live Limitless, was to try to like inspire people to do that. Like, as soon as if they have a dream to do something, whether it's small or big, just to like take that first step and actually go do it.
Yeah, I love that, because in any journey, the defined steps are the first step and the last step when you set off and when you arrive back at home. But in between, there's a lot of unknowns. So the first step is pretty much the most important one, and then it just sort of sets the ball in motion.
Yeah,
from there.
For sure.
Or the snowball for Canadians.
Yeah, and often the first step's not that difficult. It's like it's probably one of the easier steps, but the hard part is actually like starting it. It's almost like a mental game with yourself, maybe.
Cool, I like that. What's your definition of adventure?
For me, it's going to, well, there's other levels. Like, for me, it's exploring things that make me excited. So like with scuba diving, I always had a fascination with sharks. And for me, like, going scuba diving with sharks and seeing it in front of me and it's looking at me, it was just like an amazing, that really felt like an adventure. And also exploring kind of off the beaten path. I know there's a lot of people say there's not a lot left to be kind of explored these days. Like, a lot of it's kind of become touristy, but it's actually surprising how quick you feel off the beaten path as soon as you leave the actual beaten path that everyone's taken. And I think at the beginning of this show, or before we did the interview, we were talking about the place in Mexico that we went. And Mexico is a pretty well touristed place, but it's very specific places in Mexico that are touristed, and there's a lot that people don't go explore. So I like that kind of feeling of like just going a little bit off the beaten path and meeting the locals and feeling like you're the first one that was ever there.
Yeah, that's a great feeling when you think maybe someone's never even seen a white person. You think, how could this be?
Yeah.
They want to.
And sometimes I think it's all about, it's interesting. Like, one of the things when we talked about me going to Australia and going to Bali, like, Bali's been a pretty well trodden place for a number of years, and I didn't know what it was. So for me, just because I had never done the research and looked into Google and like Lonely Planet and all that stuff, for me it actually did feel like a new place. And I think maybe it's getting harder now because there's so much information out there. So if you can ignore it, it still feels new to you. But if you're, I've gotten myself into this kind of way where I've been so in deep into the Lonely Planet and trying to find like the best places to be and stuff, that when you get there, it doesn't feel, it just feels like you're doing an itinerary, just tour. So I think a lot of it can still be explored if you leave kind of the reviews and just kind of go into the unknown.
Yeah, I like that. Matt, what's the best place for people to find you online?
Well, the main website is livelimitless.net. And then there's canadianfreeflyers.com. And like I was mentioning, that one's just for Canadians, but through livelimitless.net, I'm creating other kind of travel hacking courses or travel courses in general for anyone. So you can find me there. And if you're on Instagram, I love photography. So almost all my social media handles are my full name. So Matthew G. Bailey. There's too many Matt Bailey, so I had to add my middle initial. Yeah. So yeah, those are the. You can definitely find me on the blog, and feel free to send me an email.
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on the show and teaching us about travel hacking. I learned a lot. And I'm excited to continue hanging out, and maybe we'll meet up somewhere in the world, because that would be fun.
Yeah, I'm sure we will, for sure. And thanks for having me. It's been fun. Yeah.
All right, Matt. Talk soon.
Yeah. Take care.
Bye-bye. All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Matt Bailey. After recording the interview, the first thing I did was go look at my miles and find ways that I could add extra stopovers in Europe and Africa when we head there this year. So I'm curious, what is your biggest takeaway? What's the biggest thing you learned from this episode? You can leave your answer as a review of this podcast on iTunes for your chance to win a lifetime membership in the Adventurous Entrepreneurs community, which is normally $600 a year. And I'll be picking those randomly every month, one person. And if you want to start a business you can take anywhere in the world, head to DerekLaudermilk.com to the coaching page and sign up for your free strategy session. That's all for today's show. Now it's your turn to go out there and be adventurous.